the past, because I do speech writing, and we ran a campaign for an attorney named Sean Hayes, who was running for councilman in New York City. And Dion and I ran his campaign. So I met Dion through there, and then we got involved in another campaign. And then he was the point person for American Values Super PAC, which was the Bobby Kennedy's, super PAC. So I was brought in as one of the marketing directors, and I was supposed to be the marketing director for blue collar voters. Okay. So I brought in Pat Miletich and some other fighters to talk about Bobby, Jake Shields, and both of those guys kind of turned on Bobby at the same time as Dennis Kucinich did, and really the same time I did. Jake Shields even more vocally, if you look at his Twitter, than anybody, but Dennis Kucinich as well, and Pat. I wasn't really that vocal about it because I was I still had a relationship with Dion. But after October 7th, because we really felt like Bobby was supposed to be the peace candidate. And we really felt like he did a 180 and became like this rabid Zionist, which was really puzzling because I'm a historian and I know the Kennedy family. And if you look at Joe Kennedy was one of the original America First guys. So you wouldn't expect that from Bobby, but I don't know if it has to do with the whole deal with his wife in Hollywood, and if you listen to Bobby before October 7th, he was completely the peace candidate. He was talking about closing a number of bases overseas, getting out of the Ukraine. He's very vocal about the military-industrial complex. And, let's face it, no matter your politics, if you're going to look at it objectively, the heart and soul, the lifeblood of the military-industrial complex is Zionism and our relationship with Israel and the weapons going back and forth. And Bobby, he did a complete 180. And Dennis Kucinich was the biggest one. And so many of us kind of followed Dennis Kucinich's lead after that and just left Bobby's campaign and left the Super PAC. And it was a big news story. I know Tucker Carlson was talking about it recently on his show about that with Bobby. And I'm trying to remember who his guest. I think it was Max Blumenthal was his guest, and they were talking about that. And they said, it was really bizarre for those of us that believed in Bobby. And I don't believe in being a fan of any politician. I think that's like being a fan of your bartender or your gardener. They're supposed to work for you. But a lot of people really believed in Bobby. And that 180 really changed. And it was kind of weird because if you look at Bobby and Trump, they were going at each other just a couple weeks before Bobby came out and endorsed them. It was bizarre, but
it was probably the brainworm he got from that whale he put on his car.
Yeah.
Eating it. So what you mentioned Zionism a couple times. What is your interest in that? And do you have?
Can I tell you a joke? I don't know if this is a pretty.
We can cut it if you don't like it.
If you guys don't like this joke, so it's a little. I wrote this joke because I've done a lot of stand up over the years, and I'll tell you guys. They say, Bobby claims that his voice is. I don't know if there's a PC way for me to tell this joke. They say that his voice is that way because he was vaccine injured. But in the reality is he talks like that because he's got Netanyahu's balls in his mouth.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we keep that one.
That's a big foreign entanglement right there.
What do you think about the recent ICC?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm not even familiar with that.
The ICC, International Criminal Court.
Oh, with Netanyahu?
Yeah.
I think it's a long time coming for sure. Yeah, I just didn't know, wasn't familiar with that acronym. Because people don't realize, even within Israel, he's a war criminal. We all know that. Every human rights organization recognizes that. But beyond that, he's a criminal within
His own country.
Israel. Yeah, within his own country.
But he does have support within his own country for what he's doing. Just putting it out there.
Oh,
Otherwise,
no doubt he has support. No doubt he has support, and it's really weird because if you go back and you look at the history of Zionism, Orthodox Jews were never really the truly religious Orthodox Jews were never really on board with the concept of. And we can go back and describe it any way you want, but if you go back and look at when Israel was created, it was actually triple dealing by the British, because you had Sykes-Picot with French, and you had Arabs, Palestinians that were already living there. It was promised to them. It was promised to the French and to the Jews. But if you look at the traditional Orthodox Jews, they were never really Zionist. It was much more. And Netanyahu's not really religious. He's more secular. It was much more of a secular movement. But yeah, I think that's a long time coming, like you say, with the ICC. But where do you think that's going to go? Do you think it's going to go anywhere?
No, they don't. The ICC doesn't have any teeth. They don't have a enforcing arm where they can have a police force go get them. They can't. They're disallowed from convicting anybody in absentia. And the only way he's going to go to that court is if he gets nailed in some country that's a member of it, and they ship him there, or his own country arrests him. And maybe that could happen 5 years down the road when he's out of office. But they can submit an arrest warrant, but they can't convict him if he's not actually there. They need a body.
So let me ask you this: when you say, I'm not familiar with the term, and as I'm ignorant about ICC, is that the same as Interpol?
No. The ICC. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your
It's
thunder.
the International Court of Justice, basically.
Okay.
Or the International Court of Crimes and so forth. But arrest warrant is issued, and other than America supporting, even some of NATO is not supporting Israel anymore with some of these things that they're doing. They're agreeing that this is genocide, and only America is the only one supporting and breaking its own laws. I think there's at least 5 laws that America is breaking right now. They're not. They have a Foreign Assistance Act that they're breaking, the Arms Export Control Act they're breaking, the War Crimes Act they're breaking. They're breaking the Geneva Convention in a lot of ways. They could basically arrest, and even inciting is a problem for America. Any of these congressmen and president that incites this kind of stuff that's happening with Israel could be charged $500,000 and thrown in jail for 5 years for this. But of course, they're not going to do anything.
They're not going to do it, yeah.
They're going to go ahead and allow them to go ahead and break crimes, make America a pariah as well by supporting this genocide, basically, because it's human rights. And everywhere in the world is agreeing that this is a human rights infringement.
Absolutely.
Except for the people in charge of America right now.
It's crazy because if you were to ask the average American and just say, would you support a law that states that no candidate can receive any money from any individual or group representing any foreign government? The majority of Americans would say, yeah, that sounds like America first to me, right? And people don't realize, I don't know if you guys followed Thomas Massey when he went on Tucker Carlson and talked about AIPAC. It was one of the few times you'll ever hear anybody talk about AIPAC, but he said that every Republican except him had an AIPAC guy that they had to clear everything with before they did it. I think the American people are very ignorant about this, and the propaganda is so strong. They say, that they say if you want to know who rules over you, just figure out who you cannot criticize. And it's potential infringement on free speech, right? Like, my daughter is in her 20s now, early 20s now, and she's we don't agree on everything, but this is one thing that we strongly will agree on because it was in the college campuses, right? But they're trying to quell that free speech. And where did the resistance to the Vietnam War come out of? It came out of the college campuses, right? Like, how did I start to learn about Zionism going back over 30 years ago? It's in college, because when I was in college, I had an ethics class that was like a night class, and they would bring different people in. And the person who they brought in that I listened to, and he had a quote. He was working for Pat Buchanan. A lot of people probably don't remember who Pat Buchanan was. He was on the Republican side, but he was sort of a non-interventionist. And he had a famous quote, and that quote was, Capitol Hill is Israeli-occupied territory. And that was going way back, right? And it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And that's why, you know, I didn't get excited about this presidential election. I don't really get excited about any presidential elections, because it's like George Carlin said, you know, they all have the same owners, you know?